It was the kind of case that made detectives chain smoke in their cars long after their shifts ended, the kind that made clerks at the county records office go quiet when the file was pulled. And for me, a third-year law student barely old enough to order the whiskey I'd need to process it, the case came in a faded manila folder with coffee rings and a single paperclip. On the tab, someone had scrawled, "The People vs. Javier Reyes." Beneath it, in smaller, angrier letters, "No bail. No mercy." I remember the exact moment I lost my faith in humanity. It wasn't during a war documentary or a news report about a bombing. It was on a Tuesday at 2 p.m., inside the fluorescent-lit intake room of the Franklin County Public Defender's office. My supervising attorney, a woman named Carol who had been defending the broken for 30 years, slid the folder across her desk without looking up. "This one will take your faith in humanity," she said, lighting a cigarette even though the sign above her desk clearly said it was a smoke-free zone. "Then it'll take your lunch. Read it. Tell me if you can find one redeeming thing." I opened the folder. The charges were stacked like cordwood: burglary, aggravated assault, possession of a controlled substance, and the hammer blow, attempted murder of a peace officer. The victim was a transit cop named Sergeant Mark Hollister, a 17-year veteran with a wife and twin daughters. According to the police report, Javier Reyes, a 34-year-old construction worker with no prior felony record, had been caught on multiple security cameras breaking into a locked storage unit behind a 24-hour diner at 3 a.m. When Officer Hollister responded to the silent alarm, Reyes allegedly attacked him with a tire iron, fracturing his skull in 3 places. The officer survived, but he would never return to duty. He had permanent memory loss and a tremor in his right hand that made him drop his coffee cup every morning. The evidence was airtight. The tire iron had Reyes's fingerprints. The storage unit had his boot prints. And the security footage, grainy but damning, showed a man in a gray hoodie raising a weapon over a fallen officer. The man's face was visible for only 2 seconds, but the police had matched it to Reyes's driver's license photo. I closed the folder. My stomach turned. "He did it," I said. Carol nodded. "He did it. And he won't talk. Won't give a statement. Won't even tell us why. He just sits in his cell and draws. He's looking at 25 to life, and he won't say a word in his own defense. So, congratulations, you're now the world's least lucky intern. Go meet your client." The Franklin County Detention Center smelled like bleach and despair. I was searched twice, buzzed through 3 steel doors, and led to a windowless consultation room with a single bolted-down table and 2 plastic chairs. The guard brought him in. Javier Reyes was not what I expected. He was small, maybe 5'5", with hands that looked like they'd been carved from tree roots. His face was calm, almost serene, except for his eyes. His eyes were the eyes of a man who had seen something he would never unsee. He wore an orange jumpsuit 2 sizes too big, and he carried a rolled-up piece of paper in his left hand. He sat down across from me and placed the paper on the table. It was a drawing, done in cheap ballpoint pen on a legal pad sheet. The lines were meticulous, almost architectural. It was a house. Not a mansion, but a modest 2-bedroom with a porch swing and a garden full of what looked like marigolds. In the window, a small child's face was pressed against the glass, smiling. Above the door, Reyes had written in Spanish, "Para mi hija, cada ladrillo fue un beso." For my daughter, every brick was a kiss. "I'm not here to judge you," I said, which was a lie. I was already judging him. I'd seen the photos of Officer Hollister's bloody face. "I'm here to help. But you have to talk to me. Why did you break into that storage unit? What were you looking for?" He looked at me for a long time. Then he said, his voice soft and frayed like an old rope, "You ever loved someone so much you would burn your whole life down just to keep them warm?" I didn't answer. He unrolled the drawing further. Tucked inside the fold was a photograph, creased and faded, of a little girl with pigtails and a gap-toothed smile. She was maybe 6 years old. She wore a pink backpack and held a lunchbox shaped like a ladybug. "That's my daughter, Luna," he said. "She's 7 now. She lives with her grandmother in El Salvador because I couldn't afford the daycare here. I send money every week. $300. Not much. But for her, it's everything." I nodded, impatient. Mr. Reyes, that's very touching, but it doesn't explain. The storage unit, he cut me off. It wasn't a storage unit. Not really. It was a place where a man named Silas kept things. Bad things. Things he stole from people who owed him. Silas ran a crew that preyed on immigrants, folks who couldn't go to the police. He took their savings, their documents, sometimes their children's medications. Held them hostage until they paid him back with interest. He had my daughter's medical records. Her birth certificate. The only proof I had that she was mine. I felt the first crack in my certainty. Why would he have those? Because I borrowed money from him 2 years ago. For her surgery. She had a heart condition, a hole in her ventricle. The doctors in San Salvador said without the operation, she wouldn't see her 8th birthday. I couldn't get a loan here. No credit, no cosigner. So I went to Silas. He gave me $5,000 at 100% interest. I paid him back $6,000. He said I still owed him $4,000. And then he took her papers to make sure I'd keep paying. The fluorescent light above us hummed like a trapped fly. Why didn't you go to the police? Reyes laughed, a hollow, broken sound. And say what? That an undocumented construction worker borrowed money from a criminal? They would have deported me before I finished the sentence. And then who would pay for her medicine? Who would send the money for her school? I leaned back. The case was still ugly, but suddenly it wasn't simple. So you broke in to get her documents back? I broke in to get her future back, he corrected. I waited until 3 a.m. because Silas's men did their drop-offs at midnight. I knew the unit would be empty. I brought bolt cutters. I opened the door. And I found a box, a little metal box with her name on it. Her birth certificate. Her vaccination records. A lock of her hair from when she was a baby. I put them in my backpack. And then I heard the alarm. He paused. His hands, those root-carved hands, began to tremble. The officer came in fast. Too fast. He didn't see my hands. He didn't see that I was holding the box. He saw a man in a hoodie in a dark place, and he drew his weapon. I panicked. I dropped the box. Her papers scattered everywhere. And in that moment, I swear to you on my mother's grave, I did not hit him with the tire iron. I picked up the tire iron because it was lying next to me, and I was scared. But I did not swing it. I raised it. That's all. I raised it, and he fell. He fell backward and hit his head on the concrete floor. That's what fractured his skull. Not me. The fall. I stared at him. The security footage showed the weapon being raised. It did not show the impact. The medical report noted that Officer Hollister's injuries were consistent with a fall onto a hard surface, but the prosecution had argued that the fall was caused by the blow. I had read the report 3 times. I had missed that detail every time because I had wanted to miss it. Why didn't you tell the police this? I asked. Because they had a hero cop and a brown man with a tire iron, he said. Who were they going to believe? And because I didn't have the money for a lawyer who would fight. I figured I'd take the plea. 10 years. Maybe 12. By the time I got out, Luna would be an adult. She wouldn't need me anymore. But at least she'd have her papers. At least she'd know her father didn't forget her. He slid the drawing across the table to me. I drew that for her. Every night, I draw a new house. A better one. With a yard where she can run. A kitchen where I can teach her to make pupuses. I have 217 drawings in my cell. 217 houses I will never build. I took the drawing. My hands were shaking now, too. Mr. Reyes, I'm not a real lawyer. I'm just an intern. But I'm going to make some calls. I made the calls. I called Carol, who sighed so deeply I felt it through the phone. I called the public defender assigned to the case, a burnt-out man named Dennis who hadn't taken a deposition in 3 years. I called the courthouse and requested the full, unedited security footage, not just the 15 seconds the prosecution had entered into evidence. And then, because I had no idea what else to do, I called Officer Mark Hollister. His wife answered. I expected anger. I expected a dial tone. Instead, she listened. She listened to the whole story, The daughter with the heart condition, the lock of hair, the 217 drawings. When I finished, there was a long silence. Then I heard her whisper away from the phone, "Mark. Mark, you need to hear this." A shuffling sound. A breath. And then Officer Hollister's voice, slower than it used to be, the words coming out like marbles through a funnel. "I don't remember much from that night," he said. "But I remember a smell. Cinnamon. He smelled like cinnamon. Like baking. And I remember a box. Papers flying everywhere. And I remember falling. Not being hit. Just falling." He paused. I heard his wife crying softly in the background. "I've been angry for 2 years," he said. "I've been angry at him. At God. At the tremor in my hand that won't let me hold my daughter's hairbrushes. But I don't think I was angry at the right person. I think I was angry at a ghost. A story I told myself." 2 weeks later, Officer Hollister testified at Javier Reyes's preliminary hearing. He walked slowly to the stand, leaning on a cane, his right hand tucked into his jacket pocket. The prosecutor objected. The judge overruled. And Mark Hollister, with the kind of courage that has nothing to do with guns or badges, told the truth. "Your Honor," he said, "I have reviewed the full security footage. And I have reviewed my own medical records. There is no evidence that Mr. Reyes struck me. I fell. I fell because I was an aging cop with high blood pressure who startled easily. And I have spent 2 years letting a good man rot in jail because I was too proud to admit that I made a mistake." The courtroom went silent. The prosecutor's face turned the color of old cheese. And Javier Reyes, sitting next to me in his orange jumpsuit, began to cry. Not the silent, stoic tears of a man who had accepted his fate, but the loud, ugly, heaving sobs of a father who had just been given back his life. The case was dismissed. Not pled down. Not continued. Dismissed with prejudice. The judge, a gruff woman who had once sentenced a man to death without blinking, looked at Reyes and said, "Mr. Reyes, you are free to go. I hope you build that house." That was 3 years ago. I graduated from law school and took a job at a legal aid clinic, where I represent immigrants and the working poor. I don't make much money. I drive a car that smells like fast food and has a check engine light that's been on for 14 months. But every morning, I walk past a framed drawing on my office wall, a small house with marigolds and a porch swing, every brick drawn with the precision of a man who loved his daughter more than he feared his fate. Last week, I got a letter. It was postmarked from San Salvador, but the return address was a street I didn't recognize. Inside was a photograph, a little girl with pigtails, now 10 years old, standing in front of a real house. A small house with a porch swing and a garden full of marigolds. And on the back, in careful, looping handwriting, "Gracias por no perder la fe en nosotros. Javier Y. Luna. Thank you for not losing faith in us." I pinned the photograph next to the drawing. And I thought about Carol, my old supervisor, who had said that case would take my faith in humanity. She was wrong. It didn't take my faith. It gave it back to me, not as a blind hope, but as a choice. A daily, stubborn, ridiculous choice to believe that people are more than their worst moments. That a man with a tire iron can also be a man with a daughter. That a fallen cop can find the grace to admit he fell. That justice is not a machine that grinds forward on its own, but a fragile, beautiful thing that requires ordinary people to reach across the aisle, the cell, the courtroom, and say, "I see you. I hear you. I will not let you disappear." So here is what I have learned. Faith in humanity is not something you have. It is something you do. It is the phone call you make when it's easier to hang up. It is the truth you tell when a lie would protect your pride. It is the drawing you make of a house you cannot yet afford, because the act of drawing it is already the first brick. And sometimes, just sometimes, it is a second chance wrapped in a manila folder with coffee rings and a single paperclip, waiting for someone brave enough to open it.